occasional. No country is spared. No population is safe. This little virus has ignored all human barriers and mankind's man-made shields. It is emblazoned on the consciousness of humanity, the vital truth of our interrelatedness, more quickly and graphically than any and all previous demonstrations of its importance. In addition to its biological dirty work, it enhances the world's most important spiritual themes, elevating them to the principle of distinction. Like the fire tablet, the result is a gift from God, illuminating truth, cloaked in darkness. As the importance of the oneness and peace are better understood and accepted, their chief obstacles, self-interest, with entrenched territoriality, and malignant tribalism, slowly recede. Oneness is the necessary foundation of understanding and trust and faith on which all needed changes brought by Baha'u'llah are built. I want to repeat that. Understanding the oneness of oneness of mankind is the foundation of understanding and trust, for faith on which all needed changes brought by Baha'u'llah are built. Commitment to the oneness of mankind is essential basis of truth, trust needed for human progress to go forward with cooperation, reciprocity, and mutual aid, rather than competitive and conflicting power structures. Commitment to the oneness of mankind is essential to the trust needed to change confrontational decision-making into consultative decision-making, and so on and so on and so on. It is needed to transform hate and frustration into conciliation. It is needed to change the bloodshed. In short, it is a fundamental for world peace. When the commitment to the oneness of mankind is the basis of trust and faith for the benefit of all things are possible. No other mindset will do. Baha'u'llah characterized the Western's preoccupation with vain imaginings that are aversions from his reality when he said, "Witness how, in their pursuit of that which is vain and trivial, they have sacrificed and are still sacrificing countless lives for the sake of its establishment and promotion." It seems that throughout history, when it is time for mankind to progress, it is never done pleasantly nor easily by heeding the word of God for the age. It is always a Herculean task for mankind to put aside the pursuit of that which is vain and trivial, to make room for the new reality. It often takes calamitous events, some gruesome, like wars and Holocaust, to propel humanity forward. Two calamitous wars, their subsequent carnage, terrorism, and so on, and all the good things people have done have been insufficient to do much more than nudge mankind a little bit in the right direction. Past earth-shaking events have been insufficient for either personal or global acceptance and application of building things on the foundation of the oneness of mankind. It took a virus to speed the process along. Mankind has a long history of ignoring lessons when the time is right. Increasingly severe lessons have been needed. Finally, for many to get dragged, kicking and screaming away from that which is vain and trivial into new realities. Other similarities to the fire tablet are the knack of exposing realities hidden in plain sight. With the virus, it's become socially acceptable for people to demonstrate care openly for one another. There is a new respect for social space, and good political decisions are shown to lessen its severity, such as in Taiwan. Divisive and politically dysfunctional decisions accelerated, as we see in the U.S. and much of Europe. Good health is increasingly being accepted as a human necessity rather than an individual and personal luxury. Humanity vitally needs a profound humility to study, learn, and apply lessons from others. Nationalism hinders the process. Commitment to the oneness of mankind thwarts nationalism's power. Commitment to the oneness of mankind makes it incrementally easier for people to abandon prejudices, fears, and frustrations and consign them to ashes, enabling willing people to work together better. Pray God that this plague will finally be sufficient so that more earth-shaking events, and in the Guardian's words, the rising forces of materialism, nationalism, secularism, racialism, and ecclesiasticism will not rise from the ashes or follow in the wake. That powerful statement is followed by, quote, undoubtedly, mysteriously, and surprisingly, particularly the surprising part, will enable whosoever arises to champion his cause to win complete and total victory. The pandemic is a mirror of the fire tablet because both hold such power to find light in the gloom of night and show how the fire of the love of God can provide illumination amidst the chaos of modern life, albeit slowly and unevenly for those who look for it. I harbor the hope that oblivious and naysaying humanity, moored in self-interest, territoriality, and tribalism, will recognize 2020 as the year God has used a tiny virus to highlight the oneness of mankind for a major leap toward world peace. God willing, we can learn without having to be further kicked or get a great series of kicks in mankind's collective behind to work together, solving mankind's urgent problems, such as global warming, the refugee problem, and world hunger. Okay. Do you happen to have Kevin's recording again?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you play that, then I'll get back to the tablet.
Okay, absolutely. And just for the friends, this whole week that John has been recovering, I want you to know this whole week he has been writing this prologue for each and every one of you. So this is a fresh custom piece he created for all of you. Just bear with me. I'm finding it right now, John.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We previously discussed how the seeds for solutions to problems generally can be found by thinking about or pondering and understanding the problem itself. We will go on with that line of thinking. And Netta, do you want to read my number 9? I guess it's your number 12.
Sure. The next to the last lamentation ends with, "The universe is darkened with the dust of sin. Where are the breezes of thy forgiveness, O forgiver of the worlds?" The dust of sin is the debris and darkening smog that clutters and obscures the road of life. The mess created by the dust of sin interferes with free and easy forward motion. The breezes of thy forgiveness are like a giant vacuum cleaner, getting rid of the dust of sin, making it possible to see more clearly and move ahead, free of the galling weight of past problems and injuries, from whatever source, whether from others or our own sense of guilt. The power of forgiveness cannot be overstated. There is a Plains Indian saying that says, "Holding on to a grudge or failure to forgive is like being shot 1,000 times with a single arrow." In order to function at full capacity, it is necessary to be healed from wounds caused by arrows. You can't carry on at your best if you fail to forgive, worsening the wounds left by malicious arrows. That serves to aid whoever meant to harm you and prolong the hurt. Forgiveness is okay.
Go ahead.
Forgiveness is letting go grievances, no matter who was responsible or how justified, including your own sense of shame. The individual's job is to forgive in the same manner and to the degree we expect God to forgive us. Many prayers for the departed ask for God's forgiveness for the departed soul. One time it hit me that I was asking God to forgive someone who I had not fully forgiven. The Lord's Prayer from the King James Bible reads, "Forgive us our debts as we forget our debtors." That is, asking God to let me set the standard for forgiveness.
All right. There are so many examples. One of the most outstanding examples of human forgiveness concerning a death camp survivor of the Holocaust. He had subsisted on a starvation diet, living in a disease-ridden barracks for 6 years without the least trace of physical or mental deterioration. How did he do it? In telling his own story, he said, "We lived in the Jewish section of Warsaw. My wife, our 2 daughters, and our 3 little boys. When the Germans reached our street, they lined everyone against the wall and opened fire with machine guns. I begged to be allowed to die with my family, but because I spoke German, they put me in a work group. I had to decide right then whether to let myself hate the soldiers who had done this. It was an easy decision, really. I was a lawyer. In my practice, I had seen too often what hate could do to people's minds and bodies. Hate just killed the 6 people who mattered most to me in the world. I decided then that I would spend the rest of my life, whether it was a few days or many years, loving every person I came in contact with." The power of forgiveness sustained him. So important is forgiveness as an aid to progress. I want to add that, as an aid to progress, that in the Kitabi Octavs itself, Baha'u'llah said, quote, "God hath forgiven what is past. Henceforward, everyone should utter that which is meet and seemly, and should refrain from slander, abuse, and whatever causes sadness to men." In other words, with forgiveness swept out of the way are all the stumbling blocks to progress. It's useless to try unraveling all the injustices that have been hurled against one over the ages. Let go the misdeeds and so on. Frequently, people would write to the Guardian to complain of a grievance at the hand of another Baha'i. His standard response was to, quote, forgive and forget. My favorite, written by his secretary, is, quote, he does not want the friends to form the habit of taking up a kind of Baha'i litigation against each other. Their duties to humanity are too sacred and urgent in these days, when the cause is struggling to spread and assert its independence, for them to spend their precious time and his precious time this way. Ask them, therefore, to unite, forget the past as never before. I was talking with a German psychiatrist one time, and she said that as a Lutheran before she became a Baha'i, forgiveness was nothing more than an onerous duty. She had a great difficulty with it. And when she became a Baha'i, she thought to take a different look. She wrote to the House of Justice, and their answer changed her perspective greatly. They answered that she should regard the grievances and the lack of forgiveness as a package test, just one of the many tests we have to face. And she says with that, it has greatly modified her practice as a psychiatrist and how she consoles people to how to help them get over the very difficult problem of forgiveness. I was talking with head of the cause, Mr. Kadam, one time about a particular problem, and a very incidental part of that problem was a grievance that I had to endure. And he got turned away from the problem and looked at me directly and snapped, you must forgive and forget. And we went back to discussing the problem itself. Forgiveness may well be one of life's greatest tools for removing unwanted stumbling blocks that get in the way of a rich and fulfilling life. The last lamentation is, this youth is lonely in a desolate land. How often have sincere believers felt lonely, like strangers in a desolate land, wherever they may be on planet Earth, yearning to move on to other realms? One after another, the question burns with marvelous insights, awaiting those who might try the master key, in the words of Baha'u'llah, to ponder and look beyond the questions. The range of possibilities is limitless, whether one is looking for practical applications, metaphysical thoughts, introspection, or metaphorical understanding. The revelations are priceless. Illumination are found by focusing on the responses to the tablet. Following the 36 complaints, there are 10 statements which are crisp and to the point. Even the ratio of 36 to 10 is appropriate to the fact that we are so often involved with a problem or crisis that it becomes a preoccupation. We often express concern and rehearse a litany of woes ad tedium. When answers finally do come, they are often brief, to the point, highly compressed, compared to the projected anguish of the problem. Some people might be puzzled why the term sweet was used in reference to these lamentations, where the God speaks to Baha'u'llah and says, we've heard thy sweet voice. The terrible conditions mentioned interfered with revelation. How could this call be sweet? This was the voice of God. Anything uttered by that tongue was sweet. Also, the laments suggest the possibility of better conditions and contain an intense desire to move toward the promised land. The sweetness might be latent and hidden, but it is there for those who look for it. As mentioned before, the three statements that follow inform the reader that hidden within this most sweet call are both answers to the perplexity and reminders that virtues are known by those things which they contrast: cold with heat, calamity with patience, suffering the wicked against the darkness, and the reminder that our created to bear endure. We, too, can be strengthened to deal with our personal ordeals and our private exodus en route to our individual promised sweet land of milk and honey. The word sweet is given elaboration. Two elements are highlighted: the dawning on the horizon of the covenant and the yearning after God. It would seem that in the eyes of God, the sweetness of his appearance and intense longing far outdistances the bitterness of the problems encountered. That contrast provides an enduring sweetness. Then we are invited to follow Baha'u'llah up Mount Everest, where the tablet says, quote, "By thee the banner of independence was planted on the highest peaks, and the sea of bounty surged, O rapture of the world." This is followed by other specific benefits that are resulted from the ordeals of the manifestation. Then comes a reminder to be patient, a reconsideration of the realities of abasement and affliction, and a statement of how to deal with this hate-filled world. The caution is not to give up, but press forward. Paragraph 46 is a standard to remember in the rubble of challenges called life. Each of these statements is like an entry point leading to unsuspected worlds to explore for greater illumination. For example, the banner of independence leads to thoughts of how mankind has been freed from the fetters of orthodoxy and stagnation. Justice has been called the best beloved of all things, and has the characteristic that emphasizes the independent search for the ever-elusive truth. By its aid, thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. This provides an independence from preconceived notions, prevailing thoughts, and pressures of conformity. It weakens the hold of authority figures, such as political and clergy, who have been believed and followed without question. It creates a situation in which people become practiced in listening to and considering seriously all points of view. Then, without relating any other view, each one can arrive at independent conclusions, or, as in contemplation, a conclusion can be reached which is far superior to any of the original contributions. All this because the banner of independence was planted on the highest peaks, and it is in the soil of love, unity, and common purpose. These responses can also be looked upon as answers, not just to the prophet, but through him to a lesser degree to all of us. The coldness, calamities, and darkness of the world are prevailing conditions against which each of us, according to our individual capacities, will stand in contrast. After this succession of strong, positive, forward-looking statements, there's a final lament that comes not from the messenger, but from God. You want to read that?
Sure. Let me just share the screen. Dost thou wail, or shall I wail? Rather, shall I weep at the fewness of thy champions, O thou who hast caused the wailing of the worlds?
Read it again.
Dost thou wail, or shall I wail? Rather, shall I weep at the fewness of thy champions, O thou who hast caused the wailing of the worlds?
Just imagine that. God is weeping because of the fewness of us. And it's up to us to find more us's. Baha'u'llah set in motion the thirst or the thrust of a new civilization, shredding institutions and traditions of the past. Resistance to his teaching produces the wailing we see. The fact that few people can be found to support these stupendous changes causes God to weep. Thus, a major challenge to provide champions. Some of you know about Marcus Bach, who is probably the only Western theologian who have an audience with Shoghi Effendi. In a book he wrote, A Circle of Fate, he interviewed the Pope, Helen Keller, Shoghi Effendi, and several others. And I was visiting him with him one day, and he said the one thing that holds him back from accepting Baha'u'llah is the fact that he does not see in his followers the degree of conviction that he sees in others. That was pretty powerful, I thought. We reduce divine anguish to a degree that we move beyond the fewness of thy champions. This statement is bursting with points to ponder. One line of thinking raises the question of what are those things that are really worth wailing? That, as the other situations are, a shortage of champions is the greatest tragedy of all. This problem halted revelation, at least temporarily, where it says in verse 29, now doth my pen halt. Coming as it does, the final statement emphasizes the importance that the woes of sacrifice of the world are woes and afflictions of all mankind. The greatest of his woes contains the key to relief from all the rest. Lamentable conditions continue to exist, but the fewness of thy champions, implying the means of reducing the problems, is through the champions. But who are Netta, do you want to read?
Sure. Of course, dedicated, enrolled Baha'is are the main champions of the cause when they do their utmost to promote its interests. The Guardian made a distinction. There are two kinds of Baha'is. One might say those whose religion is Baha'i and those who live for the faith. Needless to say, if we can belong to the latter category, if we can be in the vanguard of heroes, martyrs, and saints, it is more praiseworthy in the sight of God. These are champions of the first order. Two, there are also many people who...
I want to add there.
Please.
Pondering the fire tablet can help any Baha'i move into the second category. Go ahead.
There are also many people who are not Baha'is, who further the interests of the faith for this day. They may never even have heard of the cause. They are in the vanguard of working for the elimination of prejudice, women's rights, social justice, the harmony of science and religion, and so on.
Bringing these teachings to people like that, in other words, giving them more of the ammunition Baha'u'llah provided us with, serves to strengthen the onward growth of the faith. Go ahead.
3, many people are defenders of the faith from outside. There was a Muslim in Persia whose wife and children were Baha'is. At the time of the Islamic Revolution, the children were in America going to school, but the parents remained in Iran. She would hold Baha'i meetings in their home, and he, as a Muslim, would not attend. Several times the authorities came to the house saying they heard there was a Baha'i meeting being held there. He would say, "I'm a Muslim, what are you doing in my house?" That would be the end of it, and the meetings would go on. Eventually, they moved to the United States. 3 years later, when he no longer needed to defend his wife, he enrolled as a Baha'i. Tears flowed for 3 days. He indeed, as a Muslim, was a champion of the faith.
Go ahead.
There are many who have enrolled in the faith, but don't show up at meetings. There are others who became Baha'is and for some reason resigned from the faith. There are reserve troops. These are reserve troops. Some of them are actively serving the faith in manners away from the mainstream of activity. Some just don't happen to be on active duty at the moment. Many of them have stepped forward in remarkable ways when needed.
Maintaining a connection with these people is extremely helpful. I was in a situation once where it was a former Baha'i who removed a major roadblock that enabled me to go pioneering to a pioneering post. And he had left the faith because he thought it was too idealistic. But yet when push came to shove, he was on our side. Not only is Finding Champions a teaching mandate, it goes beyond acquainting people with the voice of God for this age. It has beyond finding those who will accept this revelation. It is beyond passive recognition and enrollment. It is beyond finding those who believe in and want to be the beneficiaries of a better world. More people are needed who will serve their Lord in many capacities. To fulfill this major challenge, it is necessary for each one of us to do the utmost to become one of the champions of the first order, while ever searching for more potential champions of any order. The 29th paragraph laments the fewness of thy champions, and the 30th one, the very next one, refers to God as champions of the world. I kind of like that combination. It's as if those who arise to fulfill the high calling of being a champion of his cause are thereby brought closer and closer in relationship with divinity itself. Go ahead.
Okay. The last words of the Almighty in the response to Baha'u'llah refer to the messenger as thou who has caused the wailing of the worlds. There are some fascinating ironies in this reference to the one who is the organizer of the entire planet, and the purpose of whose sorrow was so that all the peoples of the earth may attain unto abiding joy and be filled with gladness.
An immediate thought is that this is a reference to him at whose mention of whose name all the atoms of the earth have been made to vibrate and mankind's ordered life has been revolutionized. His presence on earth has caused confusion and wailing. All the social and political chaos our world culture is enduring is a gift from Baha'u'llah. It's part of the transition that we're going through. Another thought is that through this revelation, mankind has been given an incomparable vision of what life can be like. When you contrast the possibilities he presents with the agonies of a dysfunctional world, it can really make one weep and wail. But because of the continuing guidance through the institutions, this wailing does not permit giving up in despair. Rather, it energizes, fortifies, motivates, and creates greater resolve to change things. Still, another consideration has to do with the divine law. The quote, the fears and agitation which the revelation of this law provokes in men's hearts should indeed be likened to the cries of a suckling babe weaned from its mother milk, if you be of them that perceive. In bringing the laws for the new days, cries should be expected as the normal and natural response of those who fear the unknown next step and greet it with resistance, attacks, and complaints. The messenger brought the healing for the ills of the world, yet there is an outcry because it can seem hard and bitter medicine. Then another great irony comes from the priority of problems. Everything she or he has a problem. Painful though an ingrown toenail may be, it pales in comparison to having a foot torn off. In the context of the fire tablet, a priority of woes is considered. The things about which people wail come from the changes brought about by the spirit of the age. These are the solution to the world's problems. The wailing is caused by lack of understanding of the understanding disruptions that come with change. Old habits of mind and ways of behaving no longer work well. They die hard, completed with copious tears. There are entrenched prejudices based on physiocultural differences, such as race and gender, as well as differences of values, temperament, lifestyle, taste, priorities, and ways of thinking. Globally, there is tremendous wailing caused by ethnic cleansing, territoriality, and protectionism. The wide-scale refugee problem is just one of the difficulties caused by the resistance to the new imperative. Moving toward an understanding, acceptance, and implementation of the noble sentiment that the earth is one country and mankind its citizen destroys preconceived notions that causes incalculable pain misery, and wailing, as habits of mind must go through metamorphosis, even as slowly and painfully. Over and above these, there is yet more to come. The Guardian said, go ahead.
Okay, let me share the screen. A tempest, unprecedented in its violence, unpredictable in its course, catastrophic in its immediate effects, unimaginably glorious in its ultimate consequences, is at present sweeping the face of the earth. Its driving power is remorselessly gaining in rage and momentum. Its cleansing force, however much undetected, is increasing with every passing day. Humanity, gripped in the clutches of its devastating power, is smitten by the evidences of its resistless fury. It can neither perceive its origin, nor probe its significance, nor discern its outcome. Bewildered, agonized, and helpless, it watches this great and mighty wind of God invading the remotest and fairest regions of the earth, rocking its foundations, deranging its equilibrium, sundering its nations, disrupting the homes of its peoples, wasting its cities, driving into exile its kings, pulling down its bulwarks, uprooting its institutions, dimming its light, and harrowing up the souls of its inhabitants. The resulting problems and the wailing that must result have not reached their climax.
And I would add that coronavirus can be added to this list of the particulars. There are some ways in which the one who caused the wailing of the world is also the healer. The cries can be thought of as the announcement of the new emerging blessings, like the cries of a newborn baby. At this point, the dialogue ends. The messenger acknowledges the call and seems to say the vicissitude should be viewed from a different perspective. While the problems have produced the heat of tribulation, it is not a destructive force, it is a constructive force. Difficulties are thought of as the fuel which faithfulness and sacrifice can be used in looking toward thy pleasure. Thus it is a heat which tempers and makes the soul better suited for future needs, rather one which destroys, such as the result of brooding over problems and self-pity. The wailing, like the cry of a teething child, announces a wonderful process is underway, albeit the ultimate value is unknown and unforeseen. Ali Akbar is told to be thankful for this new insight. Hence thou canst breathe the fragrance of my meekness, and know what is beset us in the path of God. When anyone ponders some of the implications, limitless interrelated dimensions of divine can be discovered. This is yet another facet of the never-ending principle of progressive revelation. Go ahead.
In conclusion, there is a staggering promise of what will happen if close enough attention is paid to the instructions. Should all the servants read and ponder this, there shall be kindled in their veins a fire that shall set aflame the worlds. How can this...
Repeat that.
In conclusion, there is a staggering promise of what will happen if close enough attention is paid to the instructions. Should all the servants read and ponder this, there shall be kindled in their veins a fire that shall set aflame the worlds.
And that increases the heat of commitment. Go ahead.
How can this be? I don't know. The nature of divine conflagration can never be fully understood. In a physical sense, three things are needed for fire: heat, oxygen, and combustible material. By analogy, with the fire of Baha'u'llah in their hearts, the passion of his champions provide the heat. The Holy Spirit is like the oxygen. Prepared and receptive souls are the kindling. When the inflamed champions call upon the Holy Spirit in the presence of souls whose hearts can be ignited, combustion is inevitable.
Anyone who's tried to start a fire with nothing but wood that is soaking wet knows how hard it is to light, and how long it takes, and how much energy is needed to get the material dry enough so it will burn, and the heat and flame of its potential release. We live in a world that is not just damp, but deeply drenched with superstitions, traditions, prejudices, pride, materialism, vain imaginings, carnal desires, and other preoccupations which create stress. Drying out self-serving passions and healing the problems they cause can be a long and slow process before the love of God and set hearts aglow burn brightly. When the inflamed champion calls upon the Holy Spirit in the presence of souls whose hearts can be ignited, combustion happens. The force of the divine fire can never be extinguished. Every occurrence can lead to new worlds of insight. Yet another feature is that each one can choose to approach or remain aloof. By yielding his life, that is, giving up old, limiting, and inappropriate characteristics, the soul is tempered. Both the quality of that tempering and the time it takes are determined by the choices made. Baha'u'llah mentions many worlds. Even in this terrestrial plane, we all live in several worlds simultaneously. The worlds of work, art, sport, literature, entertainment, and leisure, as well as our personal environment, family settings, and the Baha'i community are just a few. And there are limitless spiritual worlds. The more people there are who read and ponder the fire tablet, no matter from what perspective, the more quickly and brilliantly will the fire, the love of God, become a flaming beacon for all the worlds. Through the sincerity of one faithful soul who wrote to the Redeemer of the world when he was submerged in a sea of treachery, the beloved of all hearts took the most universal elements of woes and tribulations, and by using the oldest and most universal tool of fire, extracted the heat therefrom, and made it a source of comfort and illumination, a call to action, a reservoir from which spring feelings of joy. From whatever view one chooses to consider, contemplate, and ponder the incomparable fire tablet, there is ample fuel to warm, comfort, or create a luminous glow. There is also sufficient fuel to fire the yearning for greater vision and renewal until it reaches burning proportions. With each pondering, each ember of insight, or new embers of insight are ignited, new vistas illumined, a change is forged from the destructive forces to constructive energies, and a spreading conflagration leaves lingering and glowing embers. Go ahead.
I know not, O my God, what the fire is which thou dost kindle in thy land. Earth can never cloud its splendor, nor water quench its flame. All the peoples of the world are powerless to resist its force. Great is the blessedness of him that hath been drawn nigh unto it and heard its roaring. Some, O my God, thou didst through thy strengthening grace enable to approach it, while others thou didst keep back by reason of what their hands have wrought in thy days. Whoso hath hasted towards it and attained unto it, hath, in his eagerness to gaze on thy beauty, yielded his life in thy path, and ascended unto thee, wholly detached from aught else except thyself.
And so it will continue. The flame of the worlds will consume in its path many baser worlds, such as the spheres of fear, uncertainty, and despair. In contrast, the orbs of hope, assurance, renewal, and joy are brilliantly illumined. And now I'd like to hear comments and questions and some of the insights people had from the homework that was given them some time ago.
Okay, just give me 1 second. So everyone, please feel free to unmute yourselves and use the raise your hand feature so you can speak to our beloved John. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, Gail, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't know where the hand is. That's the thing.
That's okay, go ahead.
But anyway, I love the verse, longing hands are uplifted to the heaven of thy grace and generosity, where the rains of thy bestowal, O answer of the worlds. And I was looking on the internet for more about longing hands, and in the long obligatory prayer, it says, and my longing hands are ashamed to stretch forth toward the heaven of thy bounty. And that always gets me whenever I read that. And so I did an art piece with longing hands. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I took a photograph that I took in Africa with the sun coming through the clouds, and cut out hands that were longing and the rains of his bestowal coming down. So.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, John will be able to see the artwork later during the recording. Sharon, please unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm just opening it up here. Hold on. The one I looked at, sorry, was about the barking dogs is loud on every side. Where's the lion of the forest of thy might, O chastier of the worlds? And I looked up what was the Baha'i feeling about dogs. And so Abdullah Baha had said something about, you know, a vegetable gets light and nutrition. The dog can see, animals can see and look for their food and do things. And we should be kind to the animals, but we are the spiritual people. And so to me, that it reminded me that it's about faith. I don't want to be the barking dog that can't see. I want to be the lion that is looking and finding. And so that's how that spoke to me. And so that was kind of what I got from that.
Lovely.
Okay, anyone else, please wave or, okay, yes, Kim.
So there's a couple things I'm still pondering. Thou seest this wronged one veiled in tyranny among the Syrians. I know we talked about it before, but I still don't understand what the Syrians means.
I can't tell you exactly what it means. I can just tell you my experience with it. I was concerned about it a long time, and I thought for a long time it was some kind of a pejorative. And I didn't find anything in the writings anywhere from the Guardian or anyone else that suggested that it was anything more than a geographic and cultural difference. It was not a pejorative, not putting down the Syrians necessarily, although Lord knows there's plenty of conflict among the Syrians in this day. But I could not find anything that indicated that it was a put down.
It kind of makes sense because where it was revealed is in Akka, and that is among the Syrians. That's kind of what I thought.
Well, Akka was part of Syria at the time. It was
Right.
under Syrian control. And so here he was, a Persian among the Syrians, which was, in those days, even in these days, a very dangerous kind of a situation. So it was cultural difference and geographic difference. He wasn't home. He was in Syria instead.
Okay, we have Judy Selmer and then Kavita. Judy, please ask your question.
Well, it's not a question. It's the lamentation that I picked to research was the agonies of death have laid hold on all men, whereas the surging of thine ocean of eternal life, O life of the world. I found something from Abdul Baha. Until a being setteth his foot in the plane of sacrifice, he is bereft of every favor and grace. And this plane of sacrifice is the realm of dying to the self, that the radiance of the living God may then shine forth. The martyr's field is the place of detachment from self, that the anthems of eternity may be upraised. So I think the agonies is the dying, the self dying. The self doesn't want to die, but the only way that we can get, the ocean of eternal life is by the self dying. So that's our reward for going through the pain of our self dying.
I sometimes think we have to be careful about that in terms of dying. I take a look at like the layers of an onion. There's layer after layer after layer. So in other words, we die to one form of self as we move forward in our spiritual development, and then comes the next stage. And so it's not an absolute death, but I think it's a death of a stage.
Mm-hmm.
Kavita, please. Thank you, Judy. Kavita.
Okay, the verse that I looked at was, the door leading to the divine presence is locked through the tyranny of thy foes. Where is the key of thy bestowal, O unlocker of the world? So we know when Baha'u'llah wrote this tablet when he was in great trial and tribulation, and nobody was able to see him. And then at the same time I was reading the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, when it says, it's a long quote, but I'm just going to read a small bit of it. Through them, man is exalted, and the door of security is unlocked before the face of all creation. So we can see at one point at the beginning, it was locked, and at which the Epistle to the Son of Wolf was written mostly at the end of Baha'u'llah's life, and you can see the door is locked, and he's inviting everybody to come to the happy is the man that cleaveth fast unto them and recognizes their virtue, and woe betide him that denies their station. So he's inviting everybody to come into that door. So one part we see door is locked, and one we see unlocked. And to me, the thing that tied together was the sacrifice of the purest branch, which we're told that he sacrificed so that all the Baha'is were waiting to see Baha'u'llah were able to see and unlock the door where they will be able to come and visit him. So all of that, you see, it's tied together. For me, that was very moving.
Thank you very much.
Now we have Bob Weber.
You're welcome.
Yes. John, thank you so much for sharing this special time with us, and especially since you're not well. So we'll keep you in our prayers. Thanks so much. I just wanted to comment that the fire tablet for me enabled me to understand that everything is perfect in this creation, and that the utmost calamities that we have are just perfection. And I think this tablet is my confirmation of that, that everything that Baha'u'llah mentioned, which was a terrible tribulation, the reply back to him from God was beautiful perfection. So that's all I wanted to share.
I agree. I very much agree.
Okay, and I'm just going to go through the screens. If anybody has a question or a comment, a reflection, an insight, please. Okay, yes, Diane, please unmute yourself. No? Oh, okay, never mind. Oh, that was a accident. Okay. All right, if I can have everyone unmute themselves.
Heather, Kim has a question.
Who does?
Kim.
Okay.
One of the things I did in studying this was I took a spiral thing with cards, and I put each verse, the Baha'u'llah's, the verses, and then I went to the next page. And I decided that I wanted to actually memorize the tablet. And so that's kind of what I did.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's really nice. Congratulations. Very
Yeah,
nice.
this has really become a very, I've always loved this tablet, but it's, dang, it put a fire under me. In so many ways, I can't even, and John's right, it's very mysterious in many, many different ways. And I just am so appreciative that it got translated. I mean, I remember as a child and an early teenager, it didn't exist. It wasn't available, you know? So I'm grateful to the person who translated it so that we could have it. And thank you so much for doing all the work you've done, John.
Okay, so I asked everyone, thank you, Kim. So I asked everyone to unmute themselves. Very quickly, give some energy to John. So.
Oh, thank you, John.
Thank
I-
you, John.
Well done. Thank you, John.
Well, John.
John.
Feel better, John.
Look forward to the next time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
We're in our prayers.
John, keep them coming. Don't stop writing.
In our prayers.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Beautiful
John.
A lot of prayers are with you, John.
I hope you get well soon.
Okay, Philip, say what you want to say, Philip. Say it again, Philip.
Well, I think John gave the story of Guardian, and someone said, you'll be writing from the next world. Keep them coming and keep writing.
Yes, yes. We want to keep hearing his writings from now, though, too.
Right. Thank you, John.
John, we have a book to finish.
John just reminded everybody that next week we're going to do the long healing prayer, and I'm going to extend the Zoom invitation by a week. So our last class will be December 18th now. Okay? Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Thank you, John.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Nada.
Thank you, Lada, for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.